truly thrilled to have here Julie Brown. I'm just going to read her bio. Julie Brown is the Raptor Migration and Programs Director at the Hawk Migration Association. Before joining HMANA, is that the right way to pronounce that acronym? In 2009, she migrated throughout the US and tropics, working as a field biologist, primarily with raptors, focusing on human impact studies, migration research, and behavioral studies. She received her BS in Wildlife Ecology from the University of Maine and her MS in Conservation Biology from Antioch University New England, where she studied peregrine falcon migration in Costa Rica for her thesis. She lives in New Hampshire with her husband, whom she met hawkwatching, and her two bird-loving children, a flock of chickens, her dog, and lots of fruit trees. She is a volunteer counter at the Monadnock Raptor Migration Observatory each fall. So this is truly the person we want here to talk about hawks and raptor migration monitoring today. So without further ado, I'm going to switch to speaker view if this works out and turn it over to Julie.
Hey, great. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be here and talk to everybody about migration. It's my favorite thing to talk about. And it's the perfect time to talk about migration, just since we're right in the thick of it right now. Let me share my screen. All right, let me see.
Ralph, what are you going to put the hamburgers on?
No.
Hmm?
No.
No, what are you going to put them on? How are you going to cook them? You're going to put them right on.
I just muted Diane just
Thank
so we
you.
didn't hear.
I was looking for the mute button. Thank you.
Can everybody see the first slide here? Is this coming in okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I was reading a bit about your Audubon group, and like you guys, we changed our name recently too. You said HMANA, Leslie. We used to be HMANA, and we had our 50th anniversary this past year, and we changed our name to the Hawk Migration Association. We dropped the North America because our monitoring network is growing, and we wanted a name to better reflect our geographic area. So we now have a broadwing hawk in our logo, you can see in the corner here, and that kind of better represents the Americas and the monitoring network, because now we have hawkwatch sites that stretch down into South America, which is exciting. So many of you might be familiar with raptor migration monitoring already. I know Trudy and Drew, you guys are pros. You could give this talk as well. But I'll give you an overview of what migration monitoring is, what we do at HMA, and I'll talk a little bit about how it got started, how we got to where we are, the evolution of monitoring raptors in this country, and what we're learning about species today. So I have some like trend graphs and things on various species to give you an idea of how birds are doing. And I think this is a sharp. Here, can you hear me, everybody? I think I was temporarily muted. This is a.
Oh boy.
Can you guys hear me? I got muted again.
I can hear you, Julie. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Well, I live for this time of year, as I know many of you do too, when we just get to witness this great movement of birds over our heads, and it just fills me with wonder. I never get tired of it. And I love to try and imagine just where each bird is coming from, how they choose their routes, where they're heading. It's just so exciting. And if you're not familiar with hawk watching, I know you've had some recent trips to visit hawkwatches, so I think you all probably are familiar with it, but it's basically collecting data, counting migrating raptors in the spring and fall from a fixed location. So those are usually concentration areas for raptors, north to south running ridge lines, lake shores, coastlines, anywhere that's going to concentrate birds during migration. The Great Lakes, a lot of areas around there make great hawk watching. And it really helps us just better understand their movements, how birds are moving. And, raptors are at the top of the food chain, and they're great indicators of the health of our ecosystem. So studying them, we can learn a lot. It's also just a great way to connect people with nature. Everybody loves raptors or has raptor stories to share. So it's a great way to just get kids and people of all ages hooked on birds and nature. It is totally fun and addictive too, I think. These are my kids from a few years ago at the State Line Hawkwatch in New Jersey. And they're still interested in hawk watching, not as much as they were a few years ago, but HMA, we are a small nonprofit, and we're basically a support organization for the Raptor Monitoring Network. So we offer grants, and we offer standardized protocols and data sheets, and a place to house all that migration data. And the organization was largely volunteer for the first 30 years. So I have been with the organization about 17 years, I think, which is a long time. But I'm the only full-time employee, and we have one other part-time person that does a lot of marketing and social media. And I run a lot of the programs. And then we have a large board, volunteer board, and they're very involved. So we have all these committees doing great work. They meet monthly. And if anybody's interested in getting involved, you don't have to be a board member. If you're thinking you want to help out on any of these committees, shoot me an email. We'd love to have your help. But this is a photo from out in Illinois, from Illinois State Park, Illinois Beach State Park Hawkwatch. And hawkwatchers, I feel like there's a lot of camaraderie, and often they're pretty hardy. They're willing to withstand some harsh conditions. I think part of the allure, I think most hawkwatchers would agree, is just the mystery of not knowing what you're going to see next on the horizon. And it's a fun experience to figure out what those birds are, what each species is based on their behavior and how they're flying. And it's just the mystery of hawk watching is exciting. This is a photo from my local hawkwatch site where I count at Pack Monadnock, and it's up at 2,500 feet. So we're up in the spruce forest and looking out towards the White Mountains. And one of my favorite things is just getting to not only see all those birds, but just see the seasons change and the weather systems roll in. We can see all the way into Vermont and into Massachusetts and the bridge into Maine. So it's a terrific location. Sometimes it looks like this, and you just got to put your time in. And this was, I was counting on Tuesday, and it looked a lot like this, just sitting in the fog for a couple hours. But you're rewarded if you put in your time. Sometimes you can see looks right overhead like this northern harrier. Sometimes it looks more like this, with just glimpses of birds heading out, or maybe not the best lighting. But it's always exciting, and it's never a bad day to be up there. Better than being in front of my computer for sure. This is a kettle of Mississippi kites migrating. This was taken down in Costa Rica. And for those of you who are hawk watchers, you're probably familiar with broadwing hawks heading through the Northeast. They're kind of the superstars of migration here in the Northeast, where we might see hundreds or thousands pass through in big kettles. They're the one species we see in the East, other than turkey vultures, that really congregate in these large groups. So it's always exciting to see them mid-September. And right now they're kind of all making their way down through Mexico. We put a transmitter on our backyard broadwing this year as part of as part of the Hawk Mountain Broadwing Hawk Project. My husband works with some of the biologists from Hawk Mountain, and we got a transmitter put on a broadwing, and that bird is passing through southern Mexico right now. So that's really exciting to see. And we'll get to find out where this bird is wintering in South America. So here's just a little short video of, I think this video was taken in Virginia at Rockfish Gap. But okay. And hawk watches are also great opportunities to monitor non-raptor species, whether it's songbirds or dragonflies, monarch butterflies. We share data with various other organizations. So sites can kind of opt in to monitor certain species if they want to. And then we share that data with like the Xerces Society, or I think our monarch data is going to Journey North into that database. It's a good opportunity to monitor all kinds of species, like these pelicans, common nighthawks that someone mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. They're passing through. We share that data with the Nighthawk Project. And our database is growing. This is a map showing you kind of where all the hawkwatch sites are, stretching from Alaska to Colombia, which is our furthest south site. And there's just over 200 hawkwatch sites, which is impressive. And you can see the project histories here. A lot of those sites are in the east. They're kind of on top of each other down the Appalachians. And actually where a lot of you are in New York, Southern New York, is kind of the epicenter. I think New York has probably the most hawkwatch sites of any other state, Pennsylvania and New York. And here's kind of a better look at where the active sites are. So you're right in the thick of it. A lot of hawkwatch sites. I know that Leslie mentioned your group visits Chestnut Ridge, Hook Mountain, Quaker Ridge, Lenore Wildlife Sanctuary. So lots to choose from around. And every hawkwatch site is different. Some of them are mountaintops, some of them are elementary school playgrounds, and so they vary greatly. And also their goals do too. So some of those, like elementary schools, might only be out for a couple days a season and more interested in education, whereas others might be more data oriented and less on interpretation. So we support all hawkwatch sites, whether they are whether it's somebody's backyard hawkwatch and they're only out for 5 days a season during broadwing season, or some of the more long-term sites that have been collecting rigorous data for 50 years. We support them all. And just some of those programs I mentioned, we do offer grants. We fundraise for the network of monitoring sites, so sites can apply and receive these annual grants, like this transmitter that's being put on a broadwing hawk. We also have grants for the network to purchase binoculars, repair platforms, create interpretive signage, things like that. So we offer $2,000 or $3,000 a year just for sites that can apply for these grants and hopefully keep their sites afloat, because it's tough. The majority of Hawkwatch sites are volunteer run, and a lot of them are struggling as people get older or move away, and it's hard to keep them going. So we're always looking for ways to get more money to these sites. We have a spring Raptor-thon every spring, and that teams can go birding anywhere for the day, and then they fundraise for the event, and they split half of it for HMA programs, and half of it goes back to their site, which has been really successful for a lot of sites. Our International Hawk Migration Week just happened not long ago, and that's just a chance for us to shine the light on a lot of the Hawkwatch sites and the great work they're doing. So a lot of sites will have festivals and special events. And yeah, we produce these banners. So I think we have over 80 International Hawk Migration Week banners out flying during that week, which is exciting. It's a great chance to introduce new people to hawk watching. And this week was chosen for this event because it's when we see the largest amount of numbers kind of flooding into hawkcount.org, which is our database. And I'll get to that in just a second. We also have a separate database for winter raptor data. And this is a program where people come up with their own driving routes. Can be done anywhere. I know there's a bunch that are currently taking place in New York. And you drive that same route every year. My route I do every year on January 1st throughout Vermont and New Hampshire. And you just record how many raptors you see. And all of this goes into our database, which is really growing a lot in the last few years. We offer a lunch and learn presentation series. So every month we have a new speaker come and talk about usually raptor research, but sometimes advocacy or different issues. This coming month, the end of this month, we're going to be learning about gyrfalcons and peregrine falcons. It's open to the public. It's free. You can sign up for it on our website if anybody's interested. And we also record all of these too, so you can go back and check out any of the past recordings. Education, we don't have a home base anywhere. This kitchen table I'm sitting at is kind of the HMA headquarters. Our board is spread out across the continent, and we try to do as much education as we can virtually. So we sell a lot of educational materials for Raptor ID. We have this new junior hawk watching guide, which is great. And it's available for any teachers or hawk watchers that want to order copies. We also work with a lot of teachers in Michigan through a special grant. Here's our junior hawk watcher guide, which is mostly for like elementary to middle school age, and I'm happy to mail them to anyone who's interested. They're really great. And I also get out to hawkwatch sites quite a bit and connect with hawkwatchers, hear how things are going and what challenges sites might be facing and how HMA can better support them. So this view, switching gears, this view you might recognize. It's Hawk Mountain, probably the most famous hawk watch there is. And people have known, for years that migration monitoring is an important way to track raptor populations. This is actually the world's first refuge for birds of prey, following all the years of slaughter and the mass shootings that happened in the 1920s. So it all started here. And the history of modern hawk watching was initiated by this guy, Maurice Brune, who made the first season-long migration count in 1934. So that was the first hawk watch. When we stopped shooting and started counting, or started to stop shooting anyway, it was the very beginning of that. And by the next year, 1935, one other site had joined Wagner's Gap in Westchester, Pennsylvania. So things kind of started to catch on from there. Hanging Rock Tower, this is West Virginia in the early 50s. This is a fabulous site I got a chance to visit in the last couple of years. Mount Peter started counting in the late 50s, and Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory started in the mid 60s. So people were really starting to get excited, and a lot of hawk watching started in the 70s. As Drew and Trudy could certainly talk about how New England Hawkwatch started. And it basically was just an organized group of individuals, raptor enthusiasts, and it was kind of organized weekend counts, which kind of was the beginning stages of how HMA was formed. They came up with green sheets, data sheets to record and submit them, and then a report would come out at the end of the year. So this I took from some of those first New England Hawkwatch reports that were basically based in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And these are the green sheets here on the right, and HMANA's first report in 1974. So things really caught on in the 70s. By the mid 1970s, it was really popular. People were exploring new potential sites, and a lot of sites were only active maybe a season or two. They were exploratory to see what was being seen where. But it really exploded, especially in the Northeast. It just became very popular. By the mid 80s, Golden Gate started out in California. And a really important site was established in the mid 90s. This is Veracruz, the River of Raptors down in Mexico. And this is an important site because a lot of birds are funneling through that bottleneck down through along the Gulf Coast and past Veracruz. So we can learn a lot by what birds are passing over Veracruz, and it's often close to 5 million every fall. And this is our database, hawkcount.org, that some of you might be familiar with. But since the year 2000, we transitioned from collecting and storing all those green sheets. We still have them in a warehouse close to Hawk Mountain, but we are now a fully electronic data collection and archiving system. So HawkCount is great. It's a service to the hawk watching community. It's open and free to everybody. Researchers and students can use the data. So they send us data requests, and we get permission from the sites because all the data are owned by the hawk watchers. HMA just manages it. And it's been really a foundational piece in the raptor population index, which I'll talk about soon. And that is basically a way of using these long-term data sets to help us figure out how raptor populations are doing. Before I jump into RPI, I wanted to just show you a map of New York. Some of these sites you might be familiar with. 17 active in the state is pretty darn good. In New Hampshire, I think we have 3. So a lot of hawk watchers throughout your state, and I have them listed here on the side. And if you haven't explored hawkcount.org, I recommend it. It's full of information. Aside from getting daily reports that sites submit every night, you can get a whole bunch of different information, migration windows, when birds are coming through, all the record days for big flights, all the data years that are in there. I mean, it's amazing to me that we have data from some of these sites dating back to the 30s and 40s and 50s. That blows my mind. But there's great information about how sites were formed, what the site coordinator's name is if you want to reach out, directions to the sites. And some of these hawkwatches are submitting data in real time. They use, there's a couple apps available where you can enter data in real time. So you can go on to HawkCount and see what's being seen, you know, right down the road, right as they're seeing it. You can also pull up a lot of numbers, a lot of past statistics for what's being seen. This is for Mount Peter. So you can get a sense for how, you know, how species are doing over time. And that brings me to RPI. So this started in the early 2000s, and it's a partnership between our organization and Hawk Mountain, Hawkwatch International, and Birds Canada. So it's essentially making sense of all these long-term data sets and figuring out how these raptor populations are doing. We can't use all the data in HawkCount because, as I mentioned, some sites might not be as data oriented or don't use a protocol. But if sites have at least 10 years of data and they're counting for at least 3/4 of the migration period and have us, then we can consider using it. So criteria. And this book here on the right, that's what the initial publication was that came out in, I think, 2004. And since then, we've had every 3 or 4 years or so, we'll come out with an analysis. And this is the most recent. We have a whole website just for RPI, so you can go in and check out how species are doing, read species assessments, and look at trend graphs. It's pretty neat. So what we've done in the last few years is categorize species into raptors at risk and raptors on the rise. So just to make things a little more user-friendly and easier to interpret. We have different priority levels. So the red research and conservation priority group was determined for the species that showed the highest proportion of declines during migration counts. And we pair this on the RPI website with Christmas bird count data because migration's just kind of part of the puzzle. And so we pair it with CBC data, which gives us an idea of how, you know, how birds are doing over the winter. So in the orange research group is for species that are approaching the highest proportion of declines during migration in CBC surveys for 10-year trends. And so as you can see, sharpshins, goshawks, this is now the American goshawk, of course. I haven't updated that name. Roughlegs, kestrels. Yeah, you can see my screen is a little bit covered here. Oh, osprey and harrier for under the orange. So just a few trend graphs. I'll zip through some of the species. I won't be able to cover everything. But sharp-shinned hawk, this one over the last 20 years, they've declined at almost 50% of count sites, ranking it as the most declined species of the 27 migratory raptor species that we monitor. So you can see the map here. You can see the downward arrows and the blue circles. I don't know, you may have to move, shift how you see things on the screen, but if there's a blue dot, it means stable. The downward arrow is decreasing. A green upward arrow is increasing. And then if you see the states are different colors, that's the wintering, the CBC data. So you can see, like for sharpshins, a lot of those pink states mean that it was showing a decline during Christmas bird counts. And then the RPI data are the dots and the arrows. So it kind of gives you a sense. We also try to break things up into different regions, Western, Central, Gulf, and East, which is tough because birds, you know, are migrating across a broad front. So it makes it tricky when you're talking about migration, but it helps us try to come up with general pictures as to how birds are doing regionally and overall. So sharpshins are certainly facing a lot of declines, probably the loss of forest habitat in boreal areas. I know they're susceptible to West Nile virus, a lot of different things. Probably for all raptor declines, there's a lot of different factors to consider. Environmental contaminants, things like that. But I won't get into too much detail about these trend graphs, but you can kind of look at the overall curve. This slide kind of shows what you're looking at. It's an annual indus, so it's not number of birds, but it's an annual indus of each species. So overall, this sharpshins, this is showing a graph from the mid-80s all the way through 2023. You can see a decline there. This is a hawkwatch site on the coast in Virginia. Let's see, this one, northern harrier, another species that we're concerned about, showing declines, especially in the east. If you see all those downward arrows, and they seem to be relatively stable on migration in the Gulf in the west. So I think the main speculation for harriers is loss of habitat, with the widespread loss of wetland and marshland ecosystems. Probably a loss of prey species, contaminants, things like that. But here's a decline here from Rose Tree Park in Pennsylvania, long-term declines there. Kestrels we've had our eyes on for a long time, and they've really shown widespread decline for a long time. We may be seeing a slight increase, a slight change in that in the last 10 years at some hawkwatch sites. So you can see some in the central Great Lakes area, not so bad. But this is another graph from Rose Tree Park, from Quaker Ridge and Hook Mountain, showing like just that little slight increase in the last few years. So we actually are going to be getting the most recent analysis for RPI was done in 2023, and these data are not yet up on the RPI website. So we are going to be getting that up very shortly. Osprey is kind of another interesting story. This was a species that was kind of increasing, doing very well for a long time, a lot of years. And we started to kind of see leveling off in some areas. And now there's concern. We're hearing a lot about the Chesapeake Bay area where osprey, maybe the overfishing of menhaden can be contributing to some serious nest failures there. Some people are speculating maybe that it's competition with bald eagles that are still, soaring in population. So this is definitely a species we're keeping an eye on because of some localized declines, especially in the east, as you can see there. This is Quaker Ridge. So this was one of the sites that's shown some real declines of osprey. Cape May, this is kind of a look at numbers there since the 70s. So it doesn't seem to be declining there. And it's interesting to look at these trend graphs, and it's important to realize that we have to really look at the big picture when we're trying to figure out how a species might be doing regionally or overall for the continent. There's a lot of contributing factors. In some cases, species like a red-tailed hawk may look like it's declining if we look at just RPI data, but then if we look at Christmas bird count data, we may see that numbers are great, that we're seeing for overwintering. So that can be an indication that birds are short stopping or not migrating as far. They're changing their migration behavior. So there's a lot to think about in that regard. Just because we see declines on migration doesn't mean it's an actual population decline. These are birds we categorize as raptors on the rise. Peregrines, bald eagles, and turkey and black vultures. They seem to be creeping their way north. We're seeing more and more of them here in New Hampshire. Black vultures are becoming a little more common here for sure. And just like the raptors at risk, the dark green shows the lowest proportion of declines for migration in CBC surveys, and the light green is approaching the lowest proportion of declines. So just gives you a sense. And peregrines seem to be doing pretty well. There's just a few declines for migration count sites, but overall still thriving. They are a great conservation success story. If you look at some of these trend graphs are pretty amazing, like this one from Hawk Mountain. You can look and see the DDT era in the 70s with those blips, but it's fascinating to look at this much data and see how much they've really recovered. It's incredible. Cape May, New Jersey, another site that sees a lot of peregrine falcons, and this is from the late 70s through 2023. And bald eagles, gosh, I'm hearing from everybody about bald eagles. People that have never seen bald eagles in their lives are all saying they're seeing bald eagles now. So this is exciting to see. A lot of green arrows, and CBC data as well. They're doing very well after a lot of years of conservation and monitoring efforts. Here's a trend graph from Cape May showing that steady decline increase. And I put this one in from Hook Mountain showing from 2004. And we don't really have a section. We have on the RPI website, if you go check it out, we have raptors on the rise and raptors at risk. And we do have species assessments for every species you can read about. But just for this presentation, I wanted to throw in just birds that are doing well, that are considered stable. So as far as migration and CBC data goes, these species are deemed to be more or less stable overall. So we have the broad-winged hawk, the red-shouldered hawk, the red-tailed hawk, the golden eagle, and the merlin and the Cooper's hawk here. So they are more or less stable. So this is a trend graph, or not a trend graph, a map showing broad-winged hawks. And I've been hearing from a lot of hawk watchers in the Northeast recently that are frustrated because they haven't been seeing broad-winged hawks. And it's the species that everybody wants to see and loves to see. And people come out in hordes to see them, but it can be frustrating when you don't see any. And I feel like our weather's changing a bit. We don't have as many cold fronts like we used to throughout the month of September when they're passing. And hawkwatches are getting frustrated, and I understand why. But from what we can see, some of those sites that see the big numbers like Veracruz, Mexico, and Corpus Christi, Texas, even if we're not seeing those big numbers in the east or down the Appalachians, we are still seeing those same big numbers along the coast of Mexico. So that's good news and means it and shows us that those birds are getting through, finding their way south somewhere, and their populations seem to be doing just fine. So here's a long-term trend graph from Hawk Mountain. And oh, this one is of the Merlin. And that one's showing more or less stable trends and stable for Christmas bird counts as well. Lighthouse Point in Connecticut, they see a lot of Merlins there. I should have added Fire Island, guys, to this presentation. You guys get a lot of Merlins too, and kestrels. Tadoussac is up in Quebec. They have a lot of Merlins up there. And that brings me to the next steps for RPI. We're always trying to do our best with it. Our website is not completely up to date because all the RPI partners are busy running their organizations, and it hasn't been as updated as we would like. But we're trying to get the most recent data up there, and we'll be doing another analysis next year. So it's great that as sites get 10 years of data, they can be part of RPI if they fit all the criteria. So we're excited to add more sites to RPI, and to try to really get this information in front of the state planning, state and federal agencies making these decisions. Birds need our help more than ever right now. So just trying to get this information not only in front of the public, but just into the managers that are going to be making decisions for birds, especially. And I didn't talk too much about threats to raptors, but this list is kind of just runs through the major threats facing birds. I know rodenticides is a really big one. That's a hot topic. I always have a slide of how people can help raptors. You guys are probably familiar with these efforts, but certainly finding alternatives to rodenticides is a huge one, because I know wildlife rehabilitators are just being completely overwhelmed with sick and dying raptors as a result of people using rodenticide. If you are interested in learning more about the Hawk Migration Association, you can sign up to receive our journal, which goes out twice a year, which has migration reports and articles on migration, upcoming events. We do a lot of tours around the country and in the tropics, and you could join our kettle and become a member. So all this information is on our website. We have an e-newsletter if you want to join that. We also have a lot of migration themed merchandise on our website, Hawk ID materials and t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. But that's kind of a snapshot of what we do, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. This was I'm so impressed. Let me see if I can switch to gallery view here. I am so impressed, mind blown. I know you don't need a brick and mortar home base nowadays, but to be based in effect at your kitchen table and have this vast network of sites ranging from mountaintops to elementary school playgrounds is and the data you've gathered and the whole history of the organization is truly impressive. And it's great to think. I mean, we sort of know this from projects like the CBC, but when you go out to one of these hawk watches and you're sitting there in your Adirondack chair with your cup of coffee, that you're part of this vast network. And the photos and the slides are truly phenomenal. I
Oh,
was
good.
intrigued by this idea of the drive around, the winter raptor survey, where you can put together a drive and then submit your data. Anyone can sign up to do that. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, yeah, and it's all on our website, hawkmigration.org. If anybody wants to go check it out, you can even go into the Winter Raptor Survey database and poke around and see where people have routes, and it's really fun. It's something fun to do in between spring and fall migration seasons. And you don't even have to leave your car. Just drive around and look for birds.
Julie, are you finding that this year the migration on the East Coast is a lot, bird, when you go to a hawk watch, there's not as many birds around as in years past?
Um, I would say that the weather is changing what we kind of associate with normal fall migration weather. So that's affecting what birds, some birds I think are leaving later on average. We're having these kind of warm, balmy Septembers, whereas it used to be more cold fronts with a lot of north winds to get birds moving. So in some ways there are fewer birds, but I don't know. I think some hawkwatch sites are seeing an average amount. I guess it depends on where you are.
Yeah, because I know Saturday we went to Greenwich Audubon Center, and from 8:30 until noon, they had 13 hawks go through.
I mentioned.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a bummer. Some
Alice,
days are like that at the Hawkwatch, I guess.
Plus, it was a very blue sky, so I know it's always better to have some clouds in the sky.
Yeah,
So you
I
have
would
to
say
come
that.
up. I
Oh,
I
go
was just
ahead,
gonna say
Julie.
you have to come up to Hook Mountain at least. If you only see 13 birds, you get good views of them and a lot of behavior that you can watch.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Bernie?
Yeah, I have a question. Your hawk watches go from like Quebec, Canada, all the way down to Colombia. How come you don't have anywhere else in South America as of yet?
Yeah, good question. We're trying. We're trying. There's one in Venezuela, two in Colombia. There's a site in Cuba, and then scattered throughout Central America. But we are trying. Hawk Mountain has has a great international program where they train hawk watchers with the hopes that they will go back and start hawk watches in their countries. So um, we're always trying to get the word out, especially to young biologists, conservationists down in South America, encouraging people to start them. I will say, kind of northern South America is probably more productive for hawk watching because as birds go south, they're not going to see as much migration. Central America is phenomenal because they're counting millions every spring and fall. So if we see more, it may be focused in more northern South America just because of the numbers, what can be seen.
Okay,
I know
cool.
National Audubon has made as one of its goals, kind of connecting the hemispheres, looking at everything in terms of connected hemispheres in their recent updated flight plan. I wonder if there's any overlap or partnering that can be done in that respect, because it seems like this would be a natural fit for partnering between the hemispheres.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
Alice asks a question in the chat. Have hawk watches had to change the timing of their watches because of shifts in migration due to climate change?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Many sites have. Many sites have started counting earlier in August or later into November or even December because of birds hanging out longer, not leaving, or in some cases arriving earlier. Yeah, with climate change, everything is kind of shifting and migration patterns too are not set in stone. It's kind of sometimes we think that birds just migrate the same way year after year, and some species are more hardwired than others. Some of the long distance migrants have that kind of narrow window that they migrate in, um, and or more of the complete migrants like a broadwing hawk versus like a sharp-shinned hawk that's a short distance migrant and might be more flexible in how they move and more responsive to local temperatures and changes in weather. But yeah, migration is always shifting. So we're trying to count in a standardized way, but I think hawk watchers need to take that into account that we're living in a changing world and we're going to be seeing a lot of changes to migration.
Wow, very interesting. And that decline in the sharp-shinned hawk, is that an actual population decline and not just migration data, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. From what we're seeing, with the Cooper's hawk, I think, which is a close relative, I think it is probably not we are seeing some declines with migration data, but not so much on with CBC data. So I think Cooper's hawks are changing, shifting their migration behavior a bit, but with sharp shins, I think it's believed that it's an actual population decline, and they're a little more sensitive in what they need for nesting than Cooper's hawks. They're not as opportunistic as Cooper's.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And the grants you mentioned, do many of the Hawkwatch sites take advantage of those? That's fantastic.
Yeah. We get a lot of applications, and I every year I wish we could give more money. We always do what we can to try to grow those programs because there's an forever a need for helping keep sites um, counting and afloat. So yeah, we're doing what we can there, but it's very popular. We may get 10 or 20 requests or more for a particular grant in a year. So we have to try to pick and choose, which is hard to do. Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions? I have one more, but I don't want to monopolize the Q&A. Well, my question is about, I think it was the Hawk Count app, or is it the Hawkwatch app, where you can enter data in real time? Is that something you can just download? Is that your preferred app, or how does that work?
Well, there is an app called Trek Talon that a lot of Hawkwatch sites are using, and that's for real-time data entry. Even if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can enter data right into your phone or a tablet while you're counting, and as soon as you you have internet access or Wi-Fi, it'll download. So a lot of sites like that. There was an app called Dunkadoo that just closed its doors. They're no longer an active company, and so our database manager, Jason Sodergren, who manages Hawk Count from up in Alaska, he is developing a new Hawk Count app. So it's kind of going to be based on Dunkadoo. A lot of sites were really sad when Dunkadoo went away because it was working really well for them. So Jason is trying to develop a new app. And I don't know when it'll be ready, hopefully sometime in the next year. So that's going to be basically you run the same way as Trek Talon. You can, you see an osprey and you write it down. You can enter notes in how the day went, how many visitors. Everything will go directly into Hawk Count. So a lot of sites eagerly awaiting that. And many, like our site, are just happy with pen and with pencil and paper.
Mhm.
I think there'll be a large amount of sites that just want to use paper,
Sure.
which is fine too.
Was there any
Not
thought
everyone.
about go ahead, sorry, Leslie.
Oh, no, I was just concurring. Not everyone wants to use electronics out in the field. So go ahead,
Right.
yeah.
I was asking, was there any thought about, doing some kind of team up with eBird or something like that, or to see if you could just, have them adjust theirs for, to accommodate rather than building a whole new site?
Well, we do connect with eBird. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, sites when they're entering data, they just have to check a box and it'll automatically go to eBird, all their data. So we don't, yeah, we do partner with them in a number of ways, but yeah, this app will be also linked to eBird. So a lot of sites like to have it in two places.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Well, there's a difference between seeing a bird and seeing a bird migrating. So that may not be so easily identified in eBird. In other words, at Hook Mountain, we only count the birds that are migrating, and yet we can see many eagles a day, and we might count one or two because those were the ones that we saw with the behavior of migration behavior in the right direction, very high in the sky, etc. So
Right.
it's very
I hadn't
hard,
thought of that. Okay.
so it's a different kind of data set that we're talking about.
Got it.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Interesting.
Wow. Well,
can I have, I guess, a follow-up question relating to that? I know it's like generally birds flying in the direction. What other cues can you look at for determining, well, this one's a migrating hawk versus a local resident hawk or whatever? I mean, besides like altitude, or is it just that they're going a straight line, or what other cues can you look
Yeah.
into to determine?
Yeah, it's a good question. And for some sites, it's pretty easy if you are on a ridge line, a north to south running ridge line. I feel like when birds are migrating, they have one thing on their minds, and it is just to move. So being a hawk watcher and really watching the behavior of birds, you'll learn what migration behavior is versus a bird that might just be kind of kiting around, hunting, looking down for squirrels. Turkey vultures this time of year here in New Hampshire aren't really moving yet. We see them kind of look like they're moving south, but if you watch them a few minutes, you'll see them turn around and move right back north because they're just kind of they're not ready to migrate yet. So just studying their behavior goes a long way. And it's amazing the difference you do notice between birds that are moving versus birds that aren't quite ready yet. That said, if your hawk watch is like at Cape May, New Jersey, the very tip of New Jersey, sites like that can be really tricky because birds are coming up right on that body of, they don't want to cross water, a lot of birds. And so they'll loop around and start heading north again. Or sites along the Great Lakes, they have that issue where you really got to pay attention closely to their migration, their behavior, because some of them are going to be looping around and circling and confusing you. And you want to make sure you're collecting data in a standardized way and only counting migrants, as Trudy said.
When you see one red tail drop a stick and another one flies in and grabs it, then you know it's not migrating.
Also, just knowing the migration windows for each species is really helpful. Like if you see a red tail that really looks like it's moving and it's early September here in New Hampshire, you're going to want to stay on that bird and watch it because you know that they don't typically start moving till later in October. So just knowing what birds should be moving really helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if no one has any more questions or comments, I'd like to thank you all so much for being here and thank Julie for this wonderful, informative, and entertaining talk. As far as I'm concerned, I'm even readier to go out and look for hawks. And being on the computer after being on the computer all day, being on the computer to look at bird photos is a completely different animal. So thank you all so very much. Thank you, Julie. And this
You're
recording will eventually be online on our website. Is there another comment in the chat? Hang on. Oh, it's a thank you from Gail. So yes, thanks very much and
And tomorrow should be a good day weather-wise.
wonderful.
Hawks, for hawks.
Yeah, finally we have some fall weather.
Yes.
Okay.
It'll get birds moving. Oh, well, thanks for having me. I had a blast talking with all of you. It's great.
Oh, you're welcome, and hope to see some of you on walks coming up and at talks, and I'll probably see some of you at the Christmas bird count as well. So take care, everyone, and thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Happy hawking. Bye bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks.